Tom Cotton is sounding the alarm in a really big way about China's growing threat to the United States. And he's doing it in a new book. It's called 7 Things You Can't Say About China. Cotton says these threats range from TikTok's effect on our children to what he believes is China's preparation for war against the U.S. I sat down with the senator in Washington yesterday to hear what concerns him the most when it comes to China, and also to talk about President Trump's first month in office.
Most Americans have a justly low opinion of communist China, but I think they don't understand the full extent of the threat that China poses to our way of life, to you and to your family. And I wanted to ring the alarm bell to make it clear to every American that this is not something that's going to happen in the future or that is an abstract threat to our strategic interests, but rather is a threat in their own communities and their own families right now, here today.
Well, you definitely ring the alarm bell. You call China an evil empire. You say it wants to dominate the world, as the U.S. does today. Taiwan is key to that happening. Should America defend Taiwan if China reaches for it?
Well, I think our goal should be to prevent China from trying to invade or occupy or blockade Taiwan in the first place. I think Taiwan is the most dangerous flashpoint in the world. Any kind of conflict over Taiwan will only have losers. Here in America and on Taiwan. It could lead to a stock market crash here where Americans lose their life savings, mass unemployment, shortages on our shelves, to say nothing of the loss of thousands of American troops and hundreds of aircraft and ships.
So bottom line, we need it, they want it, we can't let them have it.
Yeah, and I think it's been a longstanding position that we want the peaceful status quo, that we do not want a forcible effort to change the status quo across the state. We can continue to live with it if we're strong and clear that we will not allow communist China to blockade or invade and annex Taiwan back to the mainland.
When you wrote this book, well, first of all, you described TikTok as a spy app. President Trump has signed an extension which continues to allow TikTok to operate. Have you talked to the president about your concerns?
I've made it clear that I think we need a clean break between TikTok and communist China if it's going to continue to operate in America.
Have you picked up the phone and spoken to the president about this?
I've said that it would have been better, in my opinion, to have enforcement of the law as it's written from the first day. The law says that even after it goes into effect, if there is a divestment that totally cuts ties between TikTok and communist China, then it can be platformed again in the United States. I think that's where President Trump wants to get, and that's fine. Again, TikTok without communist China in control of it is just another social media app.
We got to talk about Ukraine, because right now, as we're sitting here, U.S. officials, Marco Rubio among them, are meeting with Russian officials in Saudi Arabia to talk about ending that war. You're a foreign policy guy. Yeah. How do you feel about this approach with Europe not at the table, Ukraine not at the table? Some people would say China loves the idea of America breaking from its European allies.
I think President Trump has been clear that once communication is reestablished with Russia and there's a framework or parameters or contours for negotiations about a truce, that President Zelensky and his team will be included about bringing an end to the Ukraine war.
But how does America look at China and say, don't you dare when it comes to Taiwan, if Russia is daring and getting Ukraine?
Well, I wish the invasion hadn't ever happened in the first place. And I would point out it didn't happen on Donald Trump's watch. I think we have to be clear that this is not going to happen again in Ukraine or elsewhere in Europe, but it's also not going to happen in Taiwan either.
The overall strength of America is relevant to any conversation about China, how we are as a people, as a society, as a culture. And so I think that brings us to DEI. It's not in the book, but it's in our politics right now. Republicans want to eliminate it from American life. Donald Trump wants to cut it out of American life. I'm curious where the line is.
I wouldn't want to try to draw the line in the abstract in every possible case. I think you look at the results of last year's election. President Trump had the best performance among African American and Latino and Asian voters of any Republican in modern times, and he was very explicit about what he wanted to campaign on.
Americans have been equal on paper anyway since the 1960s. You could make an argument for earlier, but really since the 1960s. And yet we still have inequality in our life. What role, if any, should the federal government have in reducing that inequality?
Well, I think the government should always try to provide equal opportunity for all of our citizens and maybe go the extra mile for any kind of communities that have been disadvantaged or harmed.
Let's talk about what's happening to the industry of the American government, right? 2.3 million workers, all these different departments and agencies. It's definitely gotten bigger over time. Elon Musk and Doge and President Trump, they're trying to shrink it. I think people's skepticism about the operation is the process. Do you agree with the way this is being carried out?
I'm comfortable with what's happening right now. I think the president, again, is well known for how fast he moves, that he doesn't sit around and have an interagency working group that's going to spend 6 months to do something that could be done in a few days.